So Showdown's in a weird place right now. We can agree, right? It's been about 6 months on the nose since Scarlet and Violet came out, and when that happened, we saw an insane spike in popularity. The highest numbers the site has ever hit, depending on what metric you're using. But just 2 months after the fact, that spike was almost completely lost, and we are now coming down to some of the lowest usage stats you've seen on the site, at least in overused, in many, many, many years. What does this mean? Can this be fixed by the upcoming Pokemon Home release? Some people say no, some people say yes. That's what we're going to get into today, and also be doing a bit of a retrospective on this early Scarlet and Violet metagame and what it means and what we can hope to expect going forward. So the first things first, I mentioned some numbers with the usage stats in Pokemon Showdown. You might think I'm talking my ass, and I'm kind of known as someone who hasn't loved this Pokemon Scarlet metagame so far, or at least the overused metagame so far. So maybe you think I'm just a hater who's making stuff up. No, actually. Here is a chart. I guess I will I'll banish myself to the top right corner here. Here's a chart that I made myself over the course of this week. To do that, I went to the publicly available stats info, and I went to every single month in the history of the website, and then I would log the overuse stats. Well, I did the main 5 metagames. So that's Anything Goes, National Dex, Monotype, OU, Underused, and VGC, whatever the main format is. I would add it if there's 2 things together. So for example, in this month, there was the transition between Series 9 and Series 10 VGC. So I added up to 2 to get the result. So point is, I did all of that to create this line graph here. I'll have a video that kind of goes through it a little bit more in depth this weekend, or at least a YouTube short. The ultimate point is that there is unsurprisingly spikes and valleys depending on when releases happen. This was noted on the release of the site. When Oras came out, we saw a big spike. We saw some of the biggest numbers we've ever seen for Pokemon when Sun and Moon came out. It bumped up a little bit more when Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon came out. Actually held very steady for all of Gen 7, like almost never really wandered beyond, like far below 2 million OU games played a month. But then we saw another nice little bump when Sword and Shield came out, which dumped it down quite low after the fact. I don't think a lot of people love that early Sword and Shield metagame either. Kind of a parallel that we're talking about here. That's why I'm bringing this all up. We saw an absolute crater down to 1.5 million games played. Another bump when DLC came out, cratered even lower after the fact. We saw another bump up, and then it kind of trepidatiously went down and down and down until we saw the all-time drop in the ladder at 1 million OU games played. Now, all these drops I'm talking about can kind of be explained away because it's normally pretty consistent OU, with the exception of the spikes when games come out. Normally, it holds pretty steady around that 2 million line, let's say like 1,800,000 line of games played. I wish there was a way for me to share this, by the way, but I don't think there is. However, you can explain away a lot of these valleys later on by the introduction of National Dex. Of course, the Dexit was a huge controversy with Sword and Shield, and the National Dex ladder was formed in sort of as an answer to that. So if we go here, there's only 1.5 million games played, it's 500,000 less than usual. There's the 500,000 right there, right? And normally this number lines up pretty well, right? We get up to 2 million here. There's not that many National Dex games played. However, we do see it go as one point as low as 1 million here, and only 500,000 Nat Dex games played, which is, again, the low point of overuse games played in the ladder. All this is a long run up to what we saw most recently, where we saw a spike we were at 1.5 million going into Scarlet and Violet coming out. We saw a ridiculous all-time high of 3.5 million OU games played. It's also one of the only, I think it is the first point in history where there are more VGC games than OU games played, which is really crazy. You can see it it's kind of holds steady and in this zone of all these other metagames right here, but goes crazy around Sword and Shield, and has been crazy ever since, obviously, but that's not the point. I keep getting distracted here. Overused, we saw 3.5 million come, and then it just craters back down to where it was before within 2 months. And now as of last month, we are at 1,200,000 games played. And Nat Dex is once again swelling, which suggests that there is a general disinterest in the main metagame. Perhaps people are still upset about the Dexit because, similar to right now and right after Sword and Shield, there is an all-time low amount of Pokemon in overuse right now. It's not a lot of flexibility when you have such a small pool of Pokemon to work with. But I would also venture to say it is the nature of Scarlet and Violet. Sadly, I think this metagame is very beginner-friendly, and that's why we see this huge swell of people. Every generation is going to see more and more newcomers come. But newcomers are never going to be here for the long term. And I also think the nature of this beginner-friendly metagame is once you play it a lot, you kind of start to realize that there's not as much depth to it as there are in other metagames, or if, at the very least, I don't think it's as rewarding as we're used to. Sort of an example of this is a tweet I put out today talking about how Terra, like, Terra is buzz is just this classic meme format. Oh, I'm covering my camera again. I'm just always in the way here. Terra is busted. Terra is counterable and predictable. And then Terra is busted again here. I think that's kind of true for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in general, honestly. The sort of valley of what you feel about it. So I think there's a lot of people who play it. They realize that it's very fun at first. And sorry, I should actually clarify that I'm in the same boat. It's not like I'm saying everyone who has this opinion is stupid and I'm the only genius here on the right. I'm the only one. Everyone else is dumb but me, because I've been a long-standing guy against Terra. I actually thought for a long time that Terra was great. If you asked me in January or February whether it would have banned Terra, I would say no. It's just a better, Z move. It's very cool. Leads to great situations. I love it. I think it should be here to stay. Now I'm at the point where I'm kind of coming down from the high and I'm like, okay, this is really restrictive and it leads to a lot of games that aren't answered due to skill, but are answered due to just weird 50-50 situations where, a player doesn't really, I guess there's an example right here in this tweet, which person says, expect their bulky Volk to Terra Grass for Giga Drain and resist Tusk EQ. I go for Ice Spinner because of this. They don't Terra and they quiver. And honestly, they're not leading the part where you get burned there too, right? So that's like, and it's not even just Terra for the record, by the way. It's also like, you don't know what the opponent's, great Tusk set is. And you assume that it's going to be a defensive set to go to your Corv on it. Oh no, it's offensive. You get 2 it KO'd by a close combat. Oh, I assume it's going to be a special Valiant. And oh no, it's Calm Mind. Oh no, it's Specs. Oh no, it's Scarf. Oh no, it's Expert Belt. Oh no, it's Booster Energy. I guess that one explains itself. Same goes for Roaring Moon sets, and it can terrestrialize one way. Same goes for a lot of, I lost because I was surprised by a Cerulege set that was Scarfed in the Sun instead of being the classic bulk up setup set. So there's so many, this metagame in general is just swamped with nasty 50-50 situations that don't reward long-term game planning and skillful play as much as it does just guessing correct in the right situation. I always, I had so much trouble with metagame, and I've been on the record with this. It took me a long time to get to a point of what I would call competency. And the problem is that in trying to learn, it's a tough process because oftentimes when I learn in I had struggled in Sword and Shield too, actually early on. That's a good counterpoint, right? But when I was teaching myself the ropes, I was able to look back at replay and go, okay, what did I do wrong here? What could be done? What is the errors that I can build on? And it's very clear. Whereas in a lot of Scarlet and Violet games, I look back at the replay afterwards and I go, I guessed wrong. So I think that's my pet theory on why OU saw such a precipitous drop-off, such a dramatic amount here, right? Now the question is, we now have Pokemon Home coming out soon, right? It was supposed to be happening on the 24th, but we're now seeing some stuff. I don't know. This might age poorly. We're seeing some stuff that might come later. We don't know. Ultimate question still remains, will Home fix this? The first thing we could do is historically look back at Sword and Shield and ask if Home fixed it. So I'm going to bring up this image here. If you look at the Sword and Shield usage stats, we can see that this is November, this is December. Luckily, almost all Pokemon games release on November, so we're on a very similar timeline as before. January, this is the last month of the pre-home metagame. And then what does it look like after the fact? About the exact same, right? It's frustrating. You think, oh my gosh, Home is going to change everything. It's going to be fixed. It's going to be wonderful. But realistically, and actually we can go forward a bit more. We can go to, this is once the Home metagame had settled down, right? So ultimately, what the changes ended up being was Zeraora was huge for the metagame. Dracovish started to creep up more and more in usage, but even then it was pretty high in usage even before the fact. Primarina barely cracks the rankings. But I will say that is because that Pokemon Home release and this Pokemon release are very, very, very different. If you look at the changes that happened back then, it's really not much. The reintroduced Pokemon, very few of them were OU relevant. Venusaur a little bit, I guess. Darmanitan a little bit. Kyurem and Melmetal for sure, but they were quick banned actually and only retested after the fact. Like I said, Primarina barely skimmed OU. Keldeo I don't think was in OU, and if it was barely and wasn't a big central threat. Terrakion, sure, I'll give you Terrakion, but That's Necrozma a little bit. With the exception of Zeraora, there's no big changes to the meta. If you look at the hidden abilities, the only ones that jump out to you are Clefable and Pelipper, but they, Clefable already had Magic Card. Pelipper already had Drizzle. Their bigger boofs were actually getting Softball and Defog, which is not even a very big one, to be honest, either. Bisharp got knockoff and it saw more usage, sure, but ultimate point being is there was not much of a change to the OU, to the home metagame. It changed things. It was a nice little, things were stale and it helped things get a little bit less stale, I suppose, but it's not a big change. Whereas if we compare that to what is coming in Scarlet and Violet, I'm not going to speculate on moves yet because that seems to be going back and forth a lot, based on what I'm reading and hearing. There's no consensus on what is going to change with move pools and stuff like that. And, I've heard some people say that Landorus is actually keeping Defog and Knockoff. Some people say they aren't. I'm not going to speculate whatsoever. But just looking at the list of Pokemon that are coming back, it's pretty impressive. You're going to have, I've got it right here. We've got all History forms, which are going to be significant, and brand new Pokemon. It's not even just like, oh, we have Zeraora back, I guess. No, these are brand new History Pokemon. That's exciting. Zapdos, very relevant. Mew always sneaks in there. Slowking Galar, good defensive answer. Azelf, probably not too relevant. Heatran, certainly relevant. Tornadus, Thundurus, the big boy himself. We got Volcanion. We got Magearna, Hoopa. Zamazenta is likely to be tested, unlike Zacian, who's probably going to be quick banned. Or Shifus, we don't know if we'll get Single Strike, but we'll certainly get Rapid Strike. Spectrier, also up in the air. Glastrier and Enamorus. So another new Pokemon right there, right? So it's unquestionable that these are way, way more tectonic changes to a metagame than this. And we will see things shift up a lot. But the question remains, I kind of started this video like, whining and whinging about the Scarlet and Violet metagame. Will these change it? Because most of these Pokemon are pretty offensive, with the exception of Zapdos, Slowking Galar, Heatran, and I guess Landorus and Tornadus, depending on who you ask. Actually, Zamazenta and Magearna kind of fall on that list. I don't know if these are Pokemon that are going to fix this 50-50 central metagame. That's my point that I'm getting across. These are valuable Pokemon that are going to be interesting and change things up. The face of the metagame now versus when Pokemon Home comes out, there's no question it's going to be very different. But the question is, it different for the better? Because right now we are seeing this insane drop off. Yes, some people are still playing Nat Text, which is good. It means people aren't just abandoning the site entirely. But if not, we could be seeing all new levels for OU usage here. I expect the spike we'll see after Pokemon Home will probably be similar to a DLC release that we saw in Sword and Shield, because like I said, so this month, for example, is the home release last month, which doesn't show any growth. It actually is a drop of 70,000 games played. But this is such a tectonic change, once again, that I do think we'll see something similar to a DLC spike here. And there's also questions of, will it lead to a better monotype metagame? I've made videos before on how monotype is miserable right now because most types are completely unplayable, right? And that's reflected in, I think, the lowest usage stats monotype has seen since ever. Oh my, is that true? Since the site launched, we saw the lowest usage for monotype ever last month. That's crazy. The second month of monotype on the ladder saw more usage than we saw last month. That tells you something. Maybe I don't think it's gonna help VGC much. I can't speak to VGC really, but yeah, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think is gonna change in Pokemon Showdown. Do you think home will be fixed? Do you think it'll be better? If you're somebody who is kind of not loving OU right now, not playing it a ton, do you think you'll return to it, seeing all these new changes that are coming away? And if not, tell me why, and you think, what do you need to see in order to really be bought back in? Hope you enjoyed though, and I'll catch you next time. Take it easy.